slideshow here, but thank you, Marco. Like you said, my name's Brandon McKinney. I'm a storyboard artist and occasional director for TV animation. I've gotten to draw some comics as well, but first let me show you a slideshow of some of the shows I've worked on. Okay. It's going to show up, right? There we go. My first ever show doing storyboards was a little thing called Batman Beyond. Right? You guys have all seen those? And then my second job was Static Shock, and that was a blast, and I did get to draw some of the DC major characters. And then I got a few boards to do on Justice League Unlimited. It was really great drawing in the Bruce Timm style, and I learned a ton. Next gig was Ben 10, the original one back in the early aughts. Worked on The Batman. That ran for like 5 seasons, I think. There was a show called Secret Saturdays. Check it out.
I really enjoyed that show. Like
I
love the characters, and the art and animation was fantastic.
It really was. It was a cool style. It was a unique story about this family and their, pet monsters hunting other cryptids. And then, Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes for a spell. Batman, the Brave and the Bold, which I wish I could have done more, because I love this show and this style. And Diedrich Bader, who voiced Batman on this show, does the voice of Batman on the Harley Quinn show. So, G.I. Joe Renegades, 1 season, brilliant design, clever stories. It was kind of like the A-Team, but with G.I. Joe characters. Scooby-Doo, which... you guys know IMDb? Just search my name on that, and you can see that I've done a lot of different direct-to-video movies. So they're kind of feature length, like just under 90 minutes, but it's the case of the, whatever, Phantom or Zombie Island was one. And then there have been a lot of team-ups. There was a Courage the Cowardly Dog. You guys remember that show from the 90s? They had Scooby team up with Courage, and you can get that on demand or on DVD. And Transformers Prime, Transformers Robots in Disguise, and then a ton more shows that I'm forgetting, but the most recent is the series Harley Quinn on HBO Max. So what I would do when I would present as a teacher or a lecturer is kind of do a spiel on what sequential art is, right? Like, a lot of people can draw a picture. A lot of people can draw 2 pictures or 3, but when you put them in a certain sequence, and if they're read in a certain order, sequential art tells a story of some kind, right? So, obviously, a big example of sequential art would be comic books, right? Sometimes there's one big picture, a splash page, but typically comics, have a sequence of images and word balloons, typically, or captions, that when you read them in order, tell you some kind of story. So, here, I'll circle around. Comic strips, the same deal. You read them in a certain order, along with the words, to get the joke that it's going to convey. Instruction manuals are technically sequential art, right? Step A, step B, C, you're supposed to look at these images in order, and the story it's telling you is how to build your IKEA shelves, right? Or how to use this medical device. This counts as sequential art. I mean, it's driven home where it's, you know, numbered panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, but it's using a sequence of drawn images to tell you the story of how to get out of an airplane if it's so sorry, just getting used to this computer. Some of the most early sequential art using words and images were Egyptian hieroglyphics, right? But what I do is I've drawn comics before. That's not my regular job. Mostly what I do is storyboards, you know, for various TV animated projects. I don't think I can say what one of the things I'm working on now is, but you'll really enjoy it, and you might have seen earlier seasons. And then I can say I'm working. Have you guys ever watched the show Solar Opposites on Hulu? It's kind of similar to Rick and Morty, one of the same creators. It's for grown-ups. If you're under, I don't know what age, Bert. You shouldn't watch Solar. 21?
It's really filthy.
So these are examples of storyboards, not that I drew. They were for a movie called Nine, which was a really interesting stop motion feature film. And these boards are beautiful. They're works of art. I wanted to show them to you because typically storyboards aren't this nice or fancy or toned or shaded. But the main goal of storyboards is to, it's also an instruction manual for the people who will animate and color and render the finished animation. But it's basically to show, you know, what angle the camera is going to be, what pose the character is going to be in, where they're going. Sometimes there will be arrows. A lot of times with television, we have to show where the character is going to start in the scene and where they'll end up. So there might be 2 or 3 panels with just the dude's foot. The second panel will be this, and the third panel will show him approaching this pit. Then we'll cut to this wide down shot, establishing this pit, and they've even rendered lighting there, which is great. I can't tell if the camera is zooming in because this is just a tighter shot of this image, right? So we're either cutting in closer or a camera can kind of zoom in and it shows him wedging the stick in between. But I don't know. I just thought these looked really pretty. So what I wanted to show you guys was some of the steps I go through working on Harley Quinn to create a storyboard. So we are given a script. There's a term called visualization. And when we're talking about storyboards, visualization is the concept of turning words or ideas into pictures or images. You guys have all read a prose novel, right? Fiction with made-up characters, sometimes made-up places if it's science fiction or fantasy. As you're reading, do you guys see pictures in your head? You're visualizing, right? That's visualization. Now, the next step is to get that picture out of your head and drawn in some way. Here, let me collapse this. So, with animation, we don't have to, it's a separate job to make up the characters and the backgrounds. So there are several jobs. You have writers who write the words. You have character designers who design what everybody looks like and do turnarounds so the animators know how to draw them. You have background artists who specialize in perspective and background design. And then you have story artists or storyboard artists. And our job is to take the characters and the backgrounds, read the script, and make it all come together. And make the characters act and decide where to put the camera and how did the characters move during a fight scene. So I kind of love that job because it's really the way the story gets told, right? Okay, so starting with this script, how many of you guys have watched all of the seasons of Harley Quinn so far? Okay. I know, I made you watch it. So this was a special episode that didn't have Harley in it at all. It turns into a Batman, Two-Face, and Bane episode. So, basically, you know, what the script does is describe who's in the scene, where you are, what the dialogue is. Harley is first and foremost a comedy show, so there's a ton of back and forth and dialogue. So a lot of what's needed is picking the right shots, getting the characters act to hopefully elicit the funniest bit of animation. But I loved working on this episode because there's a great big fight scene between Batman, who's wearing an armored bat suit, kind of like Iron Man, and he ends up fighting Bane. So, where are we? There's Bane, Batcave. I'm just going to briefly... exterior streets, a little later, Batman charges down the street, looking intimidating. We cut to inside the suit from Batman's point of view. We see Terminator-like scanner analysis of the street. Actually, let's skip ahead a bit. There we go. Here, exterior docks. Moments later, Bane goons load crates of into shipping containers. Suddenly, a goon is pulled up into the air and out of view. Goon number 2 turns to grab another box and screams. Batman effortlessly lifts him off the ground. Who are you working for? So, everything is written out. Usually in fight scenes, they don't always break down every beat of the fight. They're more concerned with dialogue and the gist of what's happening. What I love about my job as a board artist is, oh, there's a big fight scene, sweet. I get to make up what happens. Or draw it out, you know, in a rough form, and then with my director, we go back and forth about how it should all be broken down. But when you guys were kids, did you ever play with action figures? And you're like, oh, yeah, first I'm going to do a rocket punch, and then I'm going to, you know, pile driver. We were doing that, and we're middle-aged men getting paid by Warner Brothers, so that kind of ruled, right? Yeah, that was just the best. So, you know, they didn't describe every beat in the scene you're going to see, and hopefully hear. But that was our fun part of the job. So there's a lot of dialogue. You know, it says we have to look at a Two-Faces billboard. All right, so, you know, I'm not going to drag you through the whole scene script, but it's there. And then our job is to take it. Let me show you some character designs. Again, I did not design this. This is the reference I was given. So they took some screenshots of what Batman in the armored suit looks like in the comics, simplified it. Simple. That was hard to draw over and over and over. But that is what Batman's wearing, and then we'll cut inside, like the shots of Iron Man from the Marvel movies. We're kind of doing a parody, not a ripoff of it's a total ripoff. But and this is how Bane looks in our show. And man, I hope you can hear the dialogue, because the voice actor does a brilliant parody of Tom Hardy.
Zadomian.
James Adomian.
Mm-hmm.
He's hilarious. So, yeah, even if you're not 21, you should go and watch the Harley Quinn show. Okay, so I turn it into a storyboard. Now there's several steps. How many of you guys have ever seen a Cintiq tablet or Wacom with a light pen where you can draw directly in there? So that's how pretty much all TV boards are done these days. It used to be pencil and paper. And if you had to move a scene or change it, you had to put a Post-it note on it and redraw it, trace it on a light box. Literally, like kindergarten, take scissors and tape and cut it out and move it to a new page. So as far as storyboards go, thank goodness for computers. Copy and paste, copy, cut, paste over there. Easy breezy, right? So yeah, I draw everything on the computer and turn it into an animatic. Have you guys ever heard the term animatic before? Right? It's basically a simplified version of the animation, taking all the storyboard panels and playing them like a slideshow in sequence with the sound and with the camera movements added. But first, we have to draw them as boards.
When you're playing them with sound, does that help with the timing that you're doing?
Yes. So what's great is if we can get the actors' reads, we can put that into... So I work with a program called Storyboard Pro. The whole industry is using it now. This one company in Canada invented the perfect program, and they got everybody paying them every year for this actually awesome program where you can draw each panel and you can have a timeline where you can adjust the size of the panels. If you guys have ever worked with video editing software, it's very, very similar to that. So you can import the sound clips below into the timeline, and then I can play the sound. And if I decide, oh, it's a medium shot of Harley and Ivy talking, then I listen to their voices recorded, and I can visualize what pose they should take or what expression they should make. I'm making them act, right? And that is a part that I love, because you're taking these characters that are just drawn as model sheets, very stiff, and you're bringing them to life. Me and the voice actors, and then ultimately the animators. So this is what the board looks like, a panel at a time, right? Thank goodness I didn't have to draw this shipyard. There's boards where I have to draw every background by hand. It takes double the time, if not more. In Harley, we have a brilliant 3D artist who works with SketchUp, which is 3D software, and he built that shipyard in Sketchbook. So all I have to do, so part of the process when I'm reading the script, as I'm visualizing the images, I don't have anything more important to say. I just need to stand up because my butt hurts. The next step I will do is what I call, or many people call, thumbnails. So I'll read the script, visualize it, and then I'll do a tiny little sketch of each panel. Something that's really rough and messy and only I can read, but it gets the idea out of my head and onto paper so I can visualize the next stuff. Then I take those thumbnails and I start drawing it into Storyboard Pro in a very rough way. And having the SketchUp model of these backgrounds, I open up SketchUp, I move the camera to where I want the shot to be, and I just take a screenshot. You guys have all taken screenshots on your computers? Yeah, just a screenshot, and then I can import it in. And I can also use it to set up this camera move. It's really hard to see, but there's a green rectangle and a red rectangle. And that's showing where the camera's gonna start and where it's gonna pan to. Okay, and then we'll cut, there's usually a triangle symbol, to this shot of those goons loading up the boxes, right? So I drew the key poses of one goon handing a box to another goon. They turn away from each other, and this guy's walking close to the camera and puts the box down. So in a way, I'm almost animating this stuff. There need to be more drawings in between, but we're giving them really a lot of poses, way more than we did 20 years ago on Batman Beyond. So you can get kind of an overview. That one goon gets pulled off panel. He turns around and reacts, walks out of the storage crate. Then we cut closer to him in a medium shot. The little bat grapple grabs him and pulls him up. Oops. And off screen, this will be a cut to a medium shot of Batman talking to the thug, pointing to this billboard. Then we cut inside the helmet. Okay, so panel by panel, it's hard to read, you know, that way. It takes a little experience and a lot of patience to look at panel 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's much easier to watch it as an animatic. So that's that. That took a couple of weeks to draw and fix and put together. But man, I wish we had access to the internet, or I had a copy of the finished animation. It's really cool looking in color with music and better sound effects. This is a step to get to that process, right? So this is my finished product, but you know, it's not the same as the finished animation, which, you know, is much cooler, but you wouldn't have that without this, right? So, sorry, a little bit scattered today. One more thing I wanted to show you was back when I showed you the model sheets for the characters. These were just, you know, images we got of the various backgrounds and how they look. They're basically other screenshots from the 3D model. But it really speeds up the process. It saved us time having to render every single box or truck or crane. So yeah, if you ever work as a board artist, try to get a 3D model as your background. So from the time I finish the board, it's usually another month or so of them tweaking it because I'm moving on to the next episode. It gets shipped overseas, comes back, they fix it up more. But from when I start the storyboard to when the show airs, it's anywhere from 9 months to a year. So I often, you know, I don't know when a certain show I've worked on has come out. If I do know, I'll try to promote it on social media or something. But I love getting to look at a script, visualize it, draw it, and a year later, oh my God, it's on TV. That's kind of fun. So that's basically the process. I am more than happy to answer any questions you guys have about storyboarding, about any of the shows I've worked on. Yes, sir.
What's your favorite episode of Batman Beyond, or scene?
The one I remember the most, the one with ink, was that her name? I got to draw her a little bit, but I don't think it was a fight scene. There was an episode with Curare, the kind of blue-skinned assassin with the sword. I got to draw a lot of action with her, and that was cool. Yeah, those were a couple of my favorites.
Colorist as like a side of the process?
Is color a part of storyboarding? Was that basically your question?
Kind of. I guess, to what degree do you work with a colorist for a show, if they have?
Not much. We're the coloring is in more the art department or art direction. I, for example, used color in this board to show like when we're inside Batman's mask, or the power effect of the electricity. That depends on how much time you have, and it's whatever makes it the clearest. It would take so long to fully render and color a board, and then it doesn't matter because they're going to color it however they're supposed to in the animation. The job of a board artist is to make as clear as possible what each shot will be, how it will move, what the key poses are. To some degree, what effects will happen, but there's a lot of other people who look at this. A storyboard is an instruction manual, right? It's also a first draft. So you know what works and what doesn't, and maybe entire scenes are cut and never animated, or more is added after I'm done working on it. It's what do they call it? Not malleable, but iterative. It's a process. You know, it's always being worked on and improved, and then by the time it's shipped overseas for animation, it's done, right? But I'm sure. I mean, the board I showed you guys, when we cut inside and show Batman in the finished animation, he doesn't have his mask on. He's Bruce Wayne, you know. So that got fixed after I was done. There's a couple effects. The scene with the kid throwing away the doll and picking up the gun, I had to do a revision where he does it in a more sad way, right? So he's not like, ha ha, crime. He's like, Batman stinks. I guess I'll go to crime, and kind of walks off. But that's fun to draw, right? I got to make him act sad, and then it got animated. So, but back to your original question, color only when necessary or when you have the time for it? Yeah. Yes?
Kind of to segue off of what you were asking about the actors, the voiceovers, I noticed as it was playing, like there's a timing or a lag in between like the fighting stuff. Is that when you get it and you're laying it into Storyboard Pro?
Yeah.
Is it timed? Does it tell you where to pick it up? And then how do you decide the spacing in between making them like tussle?
Right.
It seems so complicated.
This was stretched out, and that you're dead on. You know, there was gaps, and the timing was a little off. We have a lot to do in the 6 weeks we're given to make it, and technically it's not our job to time out every part of the board. It's becoming our job, right? And that's what part of the union negotiations are about. That's an editor's job. So what you're seeing is a version before it got sweetened and tightened up by an editor and clipped down with all the gaps taken out to give it a flow. Film editing is that. You have all this footage and you only need this much footage, but you have this much. So it's what to trim out of every little shot to get it to flow nicely in the finished animation. So this was just one of many versions before the timing got really better. But that was a great observation.
There's a lot of big wrestling energy in the storyboards that you did.
Is there any particular wrestler that you modeled it after?
Okay, so I'm sort of familiar with WWE, and Bane's costume, he's a luchador,
Yep.
right? And it didn't call for it in the script, but the director I was working with, his name is Juan Meza-Leon, and was born in Mexico, right? And we're familiar with wrestling. We're like, we gotta have Bane, who looks like a luchador, doing some, elbow drops and knee drops, and he flipped him over and did a pile driver. That wasn't called for in the script. That's part of what makes doing animation fun, is adding this kind of extra oomph to it, right? So, a particular wrestler, no, but wrestling in general. But I kind of like the era of Stone Cold and The Rock and the 90s.
Era, yeah.
Yeah. That's when I realized, wrestling is just comic books live action. right? You've got good guys and bad guys, you've got drama behind the scenes, and you've got it culminating in big epic battles, right? So you either love going to an arena and see that live, or you love opening a comic and seeing it play out through art. I happen to be the comic book guy.
How true do you notice the animators stick to your storyboards? Like, are the key frames oftentimes almost exactly the same in the final animation, or do they have to like oftentimes switch stuff around with your storyboards?
So it depends. They have to follow the storyboards. It's part of their contract. And if they don't, the company is allowed a certain number of retakes. Like basically, this stinks, do it again and follow this board. It depends on how much money you have, the quality of the animation studio and how much time they have, what quality of animators they put on it. So we get stuff coming back and it's amazing. And then we get a few scenes back and it's like a third grader drew it, you know? And so we have a couple people in post who will sometimes redraw certain frames to, we have an example of, what do they call it? Like the memes, the dirt memes where the eyes are all, you know, pointing in different directions. We got animation handed back where Harley's just like, derb, you know, and we have an artist whose job it is to fix all those. So most of it comes back good, but we're asking for a lot of drawings in a short amount of time for not enough money, you know?
How much direction do you get from the director, and how much of your storyboard from the director is related to the animator that they have to follow?
Okay, so the process is, on every show there's one director, and they usually have 3, sometimes 4 board artists working for them. It depends on the director. I've directed a couple episodes of Harley and a few DC Superhero Girls shorts. I over-direct. I hand the board artist, I want you to hit a couple of these shots in your board. Everything else you make up. And so the process is we get the handout of the script. The director tells us what they want or shows us or doesn't. Then we create roughs. We make it up. Then we turn in roughs after 2 or 3 weeks. The director makes notes right on the board. Like on another layer in Storyboard Pro, he may throw out scenes. He or she, I've worked with directors of both genders, and you know, would make these notes, give them back to us, and then we clean up the board. So what I showed you there was a cleaned, tightened board. And then I hand it to them, and the director may make further notes. We get notes from the producers on the show and the executives of Warner Brothers or HBO Max. So there's constant little tweaks beyond that. And that's part of the process, right? Never have I drawn a board, turned it in, and it stayed unchanged. It always gets worked on. So, all right, are we at the end of the hour there? I think.
We're at the end of
Yeah.
the hour.
I want to thank you all for coming out, and I really want to thank you, Brendan, for your presentation. This was amazing, and it's really good to see just what happens behind the scenes in animation.
Yeah.
So you can all find Brandon at his booth. Please make sure you go and visit it, especially if you have any more questions.
Happy to answer them. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate you coming.